Hi, Julie Jones from SSB Performance, Smarter, Stronger, Better Mindset Training, here with this week's Mindset Made Tip of the Week, brought to you by Game Day Sportswear. This week we're talking about, when does the score matter? And you're thinking the score always matters. Well, the score does matter. We want to win. In fact, if we're a college coach, they pay us to win. And the score matters. But we watch the scoreboard. We look at scores all the time. Rankings, what the other teams are doing to see where we stand in a conference, the top scores, the bottom scores. And we look at scores so often that we don't realize how they might change our approach. We'd all love to be on top. We know that winning is the ultimate goal. There's no doubt about it. And we talk about the fact that we play because we love to win. But I beg to differ. If that was the case, most of us would quit a long time ago because we don't always win. What brings us back is growth, challenge, the pursuit of excellence. Watching ourselves build relationships, all those other things are really why we play. But I know the score matters. But here's the thing. The score only matters sometimes. If the score matters when you're trying to make a decision on what pitch to hit, you're in trouble. I was talking with one of my teams the other day, and when they get down early in a game, it changes the way they play. They get tight. They feel like they have to catch up. They feel like they have to be perfect. Whatever the situation is, they press. If they get up early in the game, totally different. So they are allowing the scoreboard to dictate their performance because it's dictating their thoughts. It's dictating their focus. They are watching the scoreboard. They're looking at the scoreboard to see how they should respond. And in all reality, that should not matter. I don't really remember in my softball career whether the scoreboard was a big deal to me or not, but I know in my basketball career it wasn't. I never knew what the score was. I knew how much time was on the clock. That was important. But I didn't know what the score was, and I'm happy that that's the case because my kamikaze-ness didn't change regardless of whether we were getting our butts beat or whether we were winning. I played with the same effort all the time. And that effort occasionally had me foul out of the game, of course. But the bottom line is that if we can do that, it makes us play better. As a coach, did I know what the score was? Heck yeah. Did I feel different as a coach when the score was not in our favor? Yes, I did. Is that the way that I should be coaching? No, because it's not beneficial. So I'm going to ask you, what if your scoreboard was covered? Would you play differently? What if you didn't know what the score was? Would that change your approach? That's the question. Because when we focus on being up or we focus on being down, we're not focused on the things that we can control. We're focused on things outside of our control. And the things that we can control aren't on the scoreboard. In fact, the scoreboard doesn't always tell the whole story. You can play distracted and sort of half-assed or whatever and win. And you can bust it and be close to perfect and still lose. But that scoreboard is what everyone sees, and that's what takes our attention, and we base everything on that. And I get it. I get it. I, like many of you, spent my whole life coaching. And my worth, in a lot of ways, was ranked on my record. My record does not tell the whole story of my career. I can tell you that right now. And if I would have played just to win, I would have quit from the very beginning. Because when I first got to Cleveland State, we weren't good at all. So the bottom line is we've got to figure out a better way to score things. If we're going to use this score outcome driven thing, maybe we need to revamp it a little bit to help us change our focus. When we focus on the score, when we focus on what others are doing or what others have or what's gone wrong or what needs to go right, we get into like the what if mode, and it spikes our fear, and it puts pressure on us, and our cortisol goes up, and our brain starts to change, right? We talk about the limbic system. There we are. That is front and center. And our prefrontal cortex goes real quiet because we're responding and reacting to our emotion. When the score swings, our emotions go with it, and that changes our approach. We have to make sure that we are looking at process. So, what is my team that's so worried about the score? What did we talk about, and what was their idea to get themselves back into controllable mode, focusing on what's controllable? Well, fortunately, this coach is amazing. And they already get process points for different things. Things even like sprinting out to the field and sprinting back. You think, oh my gosh, you're going to score that? Yeah, because it makes a difference. Why? Because it changes energy and it changes focus and it moves you from one thing that maybe just went wrong to let you get out there and do your job based on what's going to happen now, not based on what happened before. But before we got to this process points and the scoring, and they've done an awesome job with it, I asked them this. I said, as a pitcher, why would you ever change your approach? Quite frankly, you know where your drop ball needs to hit to be effective. You know based on the umpire more than anything. So if you're going to change your approach for the 4-hitter compared to the 9-hitter, or you're going to change your approach based on the fact that it's the 1st inning or the 7th inning, or you're going to change your approach based on the fact you're down by 4 or up by 4, you're in trouble. You want to hit that spot no matter what the situation is. Look at it from a hitter's point of view. If you're up by 4, do you give like a 3/4 swing? And if you're down by 4, do you give a 110% swing? It sounds ridiculous if you think of it that way. But that's what we do. We press or we get lax or whatever based on the scoreboard. And it's not always when we're losing, it's other times too. So it's time to evaluate based on execution instead of how we feel about the score. If we're sticking to our training, if we're managing our mindset, if we're competing with intent, if we're controlling the controllables, we're already winning no matter what the scoreboard says. One of the most elite things we can do is continue to play with where we are, with what we have, period. What can we do? What do we need to do right now? What does the game expect of us? Because the game expects something of us, because ultimately it doesn't matter who threw the ball, it doesn't matter who hit the ball, it doesn't matter where the ball came from, if you're a bat and ball sport or any other sport for that matter, whether it's a pass or whatever it might be, it's a ball. And it's you and that ball at that moment, and nothing else matters. Not the scoreboard, not what happened last, not what your coach said, nothing. It's you and the ball in that moment. And how can you get yourself into the present right then and there so that you can do your job? So whether we're down by 10 or up by 2 or whatever it is, we need to go back to Dr. Jonah Oliver and his contention that we need to have an ordinary performance on a special day. Game day is a special day. What that means is we need to use our training just like we do in practice, and we need to do those things regardless of the inning, the score, the opponent, whatever it might be. We're not trying to do something special. We're doing what we have been trained to do. Past that, we need to measure what matters. I know the score matters. I get it. But the bottom line is, if we're thinking about the score when we're trying to hit a pitch or preparing to hit a pitch, we're not going to do our best. So we have a whiteboard now that goes in the dugout, and we are tracking process points. Before last weekend, they had gotten to about 100. This past weekend, because of their intention, they got past 140 twice. They are focusing on process. They are focusing on controllables. They are focusing on good things. In fact, they're calling out things and saying, that's a process point. And then people know that even if it didn't go, the score, it's not going exactly their way, that they are doing things to move them closer to who they are or where they need to be. I was talking to them yesterday, and one of the kids on the bench was calling out things, and the pitcher could hear it. And she's like, I am getting process points for my team. That means I am doing my job. I'm doing my job. And when I feel good about doing my job, I do my job better. Okay, not a scoreboard kind of team. That's fine. I talked to another one of my teams. They weren't really into it as much. Well, how about this? What if we create job or role-specific checklists for kids on the team, right? We're going to help them define what their best execution looks like, or what execution looks like. So they can find a way to measure their effectiveness. Looking at my notes here, it's a great way to build evidence of their improvement, to keep them focused on what's in their control, keep them focused on what they know how to do, keep them moving forward. And when things aren't working collectively, we're working on getting back to our execution checklist. Check. Got my plan? Check. Got my heart rate down? Check. Got my vision where it needs to be? Check. Swung at a good pitch? Missed it? Still check. Laid off a bad pitch? Check. All these things are execution points that make a difference. And we don't celebrate the fact that maybe we laid off the rise ball. But if you are a hitter or whatever, or you're, like to shoot the three when you're open, but your coach doesn't want you to, right? Or you're in a meeting and you interject sometimes too often. If you don't do it, as Andrew Huberman talks about our don't do list, if you don't do it, you need to celebrate that. Because sometimes we have to celebrate the things we don't do because we know that that's getting us closer to our goal. This is a great time, too, to throw in our reset, right? Get us back to where we need to be. We all need a Control-Delete to get us back to where we are. I was talking last night as we were recording our podcast to Katie Scott, who plays for the Kansas City Current, the women's pro team in the Women's National Soccer League. And when she was 14 years old, we set up a reset, and she still uses it to this day in the pro league. I mean, it was only a few years ago. She's really young in the pro league, but she hits her legs, boom, boom, and she knows exactly what that means. It's Control-Alt-Delete, shift and move, going forward. We need one of those. This is also a great time for if-then planning, right? If we get into this situation, then we're going to do this. We already have a plan. If we get up, we're going to make sure that we buckle down this way. If we get down, we're going to make sure that we continue to execute this way. We're going to pull our focus in. We're going to raise our attention on the things that are controllable. Because we know when we get in those situations, we have a tendency to get away from what we need to do. I'm going to steal another trick from this awesome team that now has our process points and go back to what I just said about celebrating. At the beginning of the year, they started to celebrate the little things in a big way. And that's a good thing. You think, oh my gosh, you're just like talking about like, oh, happy, and you weren't a happy coach. It's true. But I do know this, that when our kids felt better, they played better. Did I always bring that environment in? Nope, I've admitted that. No doubt about it. Did I get pissed off based on the score and things going wrong? Absolutely. Did that help their performance? Probably not. Does that mean that you have to be like all happy all the time? No. But if we never talk about little wins, how are we ever going to stack up enough of them to get a big win? Right? You can go back and read the winner's effect. It's in a tip from about 2 years ago, I think. When we perceive something as a win, we're more likely to win the next thing in front of us. The other thing that the teams do is when they do that, they're catching each other doing stuff right. That doesn't mean the coach has to be all into it and be all happy all the time. I didn't say that. But if they're catching each other doing stuff right, then they're in a situation where they're feeling a little bit more relaxed. And when they're relaxed, they're playing better. They're reinforcing what they can control. The scoreboard lies sometimes. It doesn't always tell the truth. You can't tell effort on a scoreboard. You can't tell if you busted it and did everything you could and the scoreboard still doesn't say. You can't tell if you are horrible and you still won because you got a couple calls or whatever happened. But the bottom line is if we are looking at the scoreboard when we're trying to perform, it is not going to help us because it's separating our focus away from what it is that we have control over. And if we feel the pressure of the scoreboard, we're going to lose most of the time. Champions focus on what's next, no matter what just happened. That's how we take our power back. Cover the scoreboard up, whether it's physically, mentally, whatever it is. Build your own scoreboard. Create execution checklists. And maybe this all sounds like too much, but maybe there's a couple kids on your team that need this, or maybe this is something, if you're a salesperson, you have a scoreboard too, right? Maybe you change your scoreboard around a little bit because all we're trying to do is make sure that we stay with it. Next week's tip is all about persistence and keeping the scoreboard covered up and keeping our momentum or keeping our execution and our effort the same regardless is going to help us come out on top more often than not. Or more often than if we change our approach. Maybe I should say that. I know the score matters. I get it. There's balls back here for wins, right? And I don't have any balls for all the losses, thank goodness, because there'd be more back there. But the bottom line is that the scoreboard, paying attention to the score, when we feel that pressure, it changes us. And that change isn't for the better. So how can we shift our focus from that we have no control over to something that we can control that will get us closer to being the team that can change the scoreboard ultimately? That's the question. Don't forget to check out Game Changers Athlete Edition with Courtney Harmon and Julie Jones on Spotify, on Apple Podcast, on Podbean, iHeartRadio, YouTube. We've got some great guests coming up, and I hope that you will share this with the people in your network. We would appreciate any share that you can give us. It's a no-cost way to support us, and we're very, very grateful for that. Until next week, make a new scoreboard. See if it changes your performance. Have a great week.